we have Dr. Katherine Dunn. Katherine is the Joint Head of Quantum Technologies at EPSRC, with responsibility for strategy development and the funding of research and skills in quantum technologies as part of the National Quantum Technologies Program. She has specific responsibility for overseeing the areas of quantum computing and quantum communications. And today she will talk to us about funding. Hello, Katherine. Thank you very much for accepting our invitation to speak at Careers in Quantum. And we're glad to have you. So please start anytime you're ready.
Great, thanks so much. Thanks for the introduction and thank you for inviting me. I will just share my screen. Are you able to view that okay?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, perfect. So yes, as you already mentioned, I'm Joint Head of Quantum Technologies at EPSRC, along with my colleague Anka Davis, and together we oversee EPSRC's strategy for quantum technologies and our investments in research and training. So I'm really happy to be here to talk to you about how EPSRC can support academics within quantum technologies at the various points in their career. As I've only got a short amount of time today, I'm going to focus on giving an overview of the different funding routes that we offer, rather than going into the detail of grant writing and the peer review process, but I can point you to appropriate sources of information on that if people are interested. So here's just a quick outline of my talk. I'll introduce UKRI and EPSRC for those of you that aren't so familiar with our organisation. I'll also just give a quick introduction to EPSRC as part of the National Quantum Technologies Programme, and then go on to talk about our specific funding routes, focusing in on fellowships and new investigator awards. Okay, so EPSRC, it's a part of UK Research and Innovation, which was launched in 2018, and together with the other 7 research councils, Research England and Innovate UK, we form UK Research and Innovation, and we report into our parent department, which is the Department for Business, Energy, Industrial Strategy, who in turn get their funding from the Treasury. So it then comes back down to UKRI and is divided up through all the different research councils there. So working with government, we invest over £7 billion a year in research and innovation, partnering with academia and industry to ensure that we're creating knowledge with impact. This slide here just gives an overview of the breadth of research that we fund within EPSRC. So going all the way from our kind of fundamental sciences, chemistry, physics, maths, to more challenge-focused themes such as energy, manufacturing, and of course, quantum technologies. So we in the technologies team work very closely with colleagues and other teams to ensure that we're identifying the appropriate underpinning quantum science that we can then bring through and fund in quantum technologies to take it to that next level, up the transformative technology readiness levels towards commercialisation, which is what the National Quantum Technologies Programme is really trying to achieve. So we'll talk about that very briefly now. What is the NTTP? So this was funding given government in 2014 to launch this coordinated programme between several different partners, of which EPSRC is one. So we're given £270 million with additional public and private sector funding to reach £350 million of investment in that first phase. And really the aim of the programme is to turn the UK's strengths in quantum science into strengths in quantum technologies, making the UK the go-to place to research, invest and innovate. EPSRC's key investments in the first phase were the 4 quantum technology hubs, which I'm sure you're familiar with. And these are a network of hubs across key academic universities in the UK in application areas of computing, communications, sensing and timing, and quantum imaging. And then following the success of the first phase, we then invested further into a second phase, bringing in additional partners as well. So the partners include EPSRC, Innovate UK, STFC, GCHQ, DSTL and BAYES. So it really is that network of partnerships bringing together industry, academia and government that have made the programme so successful. It's also really important to note that skills is absolutely a key part of the NTTP, because without people being having those necessary quantum skills, there's really no hope for that quantum sector growing within the UK. Okay, so now on to the main part of the presentation, talking about the different funding routes that we offer within EPSRC. So this slide gives an overview from PhD training all the way up to funding available for those more established professors who have a large grant portfolio already and looking to expand upon that. So you can see we support researchers across all different stages and how the funding routes kind of change based on an academic's career experience with grant management and the type of research that they want to carry out. So for today's talk, I'll mainly just focus in on those first 3 rows, thinking about today's audience in the early career stage. I think it's really important to note that training is a really important part of all these different grant schemes, and there's flexibility within them to build in kind of bespoke packages for you to not only carry out the research you want to do, but ensure you've got support to develop your career appropriately as you move forward. I think it's also kind of important to recognise that each of these different schemes have got a slightly different function. So it's really important that you research them in advance to understand which one is going to be best suited to you, not in a particular career stage, so what you want to achieve over that grant term period. If it's purely to focus in on a research project, or if it's kind of looking for that broader personal development as well. And I'll talk about some of those differences later in the talk. So I'll talk through our kind of portfolio of doctoral training approaches that we offer. Some of you will be familiar with these already, but we really have 3 different streams by which we fund PhD students at EPSRC. So around 45% of our studentship training goes through the doctoral training partnerships, about 45% through Centres for Doctoral Training, and about 10% through this industrial case route. So what do these mean? The DTP is a block grant which is awarded to the university based on their research income. So where a university has been very successful in bringing in grant income, they get a larger DTP to help support that, you know, aligning students strategically to their areas of strength. So it's designed to be really flexible for universities to use and align to their own strategic goals as well as departmental needs. And so that tends to be a traditional PhD, 3.5 years, where a student identifies a project they want to work on and they get straight into that project and focus on that for the remainder of their time. The Industrial Case Awards are slightly different. These are awards which are given a partner, and then they choose university and the project where they want that to be carried out. So these studentship vouchers are given to companies who have partnered on a high value of EPSRC grants. So if you're interested in kind of carrying out your PhD directly with industry, getting that experience, being surrounded by that kind of environment, then that might be a good choice for you. And then finally, we've got the Centres for Doctoral Training. And so these are centres based on scientific areas of national need. And they're 4-year programmes in total, where the first year is really quite broad before specialising in your PhD project later. I'll talk about them a bit more on the next slide. It's important to note for all of our PhD schemes, wherever the money is coming from, you need to apply directly to the university for studentships. That's not something EPSRC kind of gives out directly to the students. Okay, so in quantum technology specifically, we're currently funding 2 centres for doctoral training with over £11 million of investment in quantum CDTs. So these are running until 2028. But noting that the programmes take 4 years, the last cohort will be in September 2023. So yeah, we've got the 2 CDTs at University of Bristol and UCL. As I said already, they're four-year programs, with the first year giving you really broad experience to undertake some different lecture courses, as well as some shorter research projects, just to get a taste of what you might like to carry on and pursue for the rest of your PhD. CDTs also tend to have a lot of industrial partners, so there's some opportunity there as well to understand how industry works, what their needs are, perhaps do some shorter research placements with industry without carrying out your full PhD there, although that is an option as well. And then finally, one of the unique features of the Centre for Doctoral Training is the cohort-based approach, which EPSRC thinks a really key feature of them. So you have that support network built in that you're kind of training alongside 10 to 12 other students, and you've kind of already got that network to help bounce ideas off, even when you're all going off and doing your own different research projects, potentially in different departments. You've got that shared experience. Okay, so now I'm going to move on to talk about fellowships and what they are and how they compare to kind of a traditional research grant. So we tend to split our funding into two different types, fellowships and then research grants. And this table gives a bit of an overview of the differences between them. So what is a fellowship? It's a personal award that you as the applicant apply for, and it is given to you. That means it can be transferred between universities should you wish, although one of the requirements for fellowship is that you have really a high level of support from that institution. They're going to help you develop your career. You're able to dedicate a really significant proportion of your time on a fellowship, so the grant will pay for your salary on that. So that's between 50 and 100% of your time, and that's to dedicate to carrying out your research programme, which you will have detailed in the application, as well as building your wider networks. It gives you that time to dedicate to building collaborations nationally and internationally, and building your research profile more generally. One of the other aspects of a fellowship that's important to mention is the kind of expectation to act as an ambassador or advocate for their research area. So you'll be reaching out and leading the way to show why your area is important and communicate, not just within your own field, but also more widely. Because of the nature of the fellowship and dedicating a large proportion of your time to it, it means that you can reduce some of the other responsibilities within your host institution. So, for example, teaching and administration. And the fellowship package is really flexible. When you write your application, you're really able to tailor it to your needs in terms of what you'll need to carry out your research vision, but also what you need in terms of helping develop your career, whether that be going on specific courses to develop your leadership or management, having a mentor within the university to help you develop. It's really up to you to write that. Then in terms of comparing that to a traditional research grant, a fellowship is, as I say, given to one person. You're the principal investigator, and usually that's you carrying out your own individual research programme without co-investigators on the grant, although you might have collaborators. For research grants, these tend to be more of a team effort where you've got a principal investigator leading it, but you've got several co-investigators who might be leading their own research package within that. In comparison to a fellowship where you don't need to have an academic position, you can be a postdoc or just finish your PhD. For research grants, you do need to have a permanent position, be a lecturer or equivalent. And the real focus on this is the research deliverables. What are you aiming to achieve through your research programme, and ensuring that you're able to meet those outcomes through getting papers out and all those other kind of metrics. Whereas in a fellowship, you spend a large part of your time working on that research programme. With research grants, it's not always the case. So you might spend a lot smaller percentage of your time on it, maybe 10, 20%. And investigators on research grants usually have many other responsibilities under their remit within the department, including administrative and teaching responsibilities. And then in comparison to the fellowship, where it's a personal award and you can take that with you, the grant is actually given to the institution. So you can't transfer it if you move to a different university. Okay, I'll talk a little bit about our fellowship framework. This has recently been updated to simplify it for applicants and reduce unnecessary barriers, but it might still be a little bit confusing if you're not too familiar with the schemes that we offer. But as I say, they're really flexible awards that are looking to just support excellent academics as they develop their careers. Really looking to support those future leaders in the field. They break down into two types. There's the postdoctoral award, in which you can apply for 3 years of funding, and they are specific to EPSRC areas where we've determined that there's a strategic need. So actually in quantum at the moment, we're not offering postdoc fellowships. We are offering the open fellowships. And so this is where you can apply for up to 5 years of funding. So a really long sustained time for you to dedicate to your research programme and career development. And they're open at any career stage after post. We also don't have kind of fixed periods when you can apply. You can apply at any time that suits you and the kind of timeliness of your research. And we've also introduced what we're calling the optional plus component. So this is where you can actually choose to dedicate 20 to 50% of your time to create positive change in the research community beyond just the scientific project. So this would allow you to do public engagement work, outreach, focus on policy, equality, diversity and inclusion, or responsible research type activities. So again, this really plays into the advocacy factor that we think is so important to a fellowship award. There is a lot of guidance on our website if you want to find out more information about different types of fellowship. So this is a few more details. As I say, they're really flexible, so they're looking to give opportunity at early career stage onwards to develop your career. Want to just emphasise there are different opportunities to include within the research element of your proposal. That can include innovation, instrument technique development and software engineering. So there's a real breadth there. You should feel free to kind of be ambitious in the research programme that you're proposing. And as I say, there really is that freedom to pursue technical elements to influence community change. I think, again, that's particularly important in an area like quantum, where there's maybe some misconceptions or people aren't aware of the benefit that it could bring to their scientific field or business. And we've also got a more inclusive assessment of different career paths using a narrative CV. So I think with fellowships, we really welcome applications from people who've had maybe non-traditional career paths. If they've moved into a different sector, worked in industry for a while and back to academia, this is a really good way of doing it, to have that time to build up your research outputs and build your network. It's also great for people who have had career breaks, time out from maternity or paternity leave, to come back and have that dedicated focus on their research. A quick slide on eligibility. So as I say, you don't need to have a permanent position to apply for a fellowship, but you are expected to have a PhD or equivalent research experience. There are no rules about years of postdoc experience you need before applying. You do need a host organisation at a UK eligible organisation, usually a university, and you need to provide evidence of how they're going to support you in achieving the aims of your fellowship. Whether that be, as I say, specific courses, mentoring, giving you the opportunity to supervise PhD students, something like that. And I already covered the last point there. This just gives a few examples of how somebody might use a fellowship. So as I say, somebody who's looking to become more independent, start their own research group, hire a postdoc to work with them, and really bring people along with their own research vision, research programme. So somebody who's had a sustained period of part-time working patterns and now wants to increase outputs to be competitive at applying for next stage funding. Somebody who's a technical professional who wants to collaborate with researchers in different scientific disciplines to apply their techniques. Somebody who wants to transfer knowledge to a different discipline. And as I said previously, also maybe somebody who's worked in industry is now looking to return to academia. Okay, so I've covered the elements of the EPSRC fellowship framework. Now I want to just move on and talk quickly about opportunities for fellowships that exist elsewhere in UKRI. So you may have heard of the Future Leaders Fellowships. So this was a huge pot of money given to UKRI by government to fund fellowships across the whole of the whole of UKRI remit. So that's everything from social sciences, arts and humanities, the medicine, biology, and including EPSRC, of course. So as I say, it's a huge pot of money to fund researchers and innovators with outstanding potential. And they have quite a unique model that they're running. So you can apply for up to 7 years of funding in a 4+3 model. So you apply for the first 4, and should that be successful and get good outputs, you want to come in and apply for kind of this extension, that's allowed. So we've now basically allocated, or in the process allocating most of these funds. We haven't had confirmation from government yet of what the next phase will be, but the scheme's been really successful, and I think we're hopeful that we will get funding to continue this scheme going forward. So if you're interested, keep an eye on the UKRI website. So although I mentioned we don't currently have the postdoc fellowships open in quantum technologies and EPSRC, what we are looking to do is launch a specific quantum technology fellowship call this summer, going live on the 4th of August, to really target postdoc researchers in quantum technologies, to allow them to take that next stage of their career and you know, have that research independence of pursuing their own research program and building their career profile. And really focusing on career development as part of this fellowship. So ensuring there's appropriate mentorship in place from a more experienced colleague, opportunity for collaborations, getting some industrial experience potentially as part of the fellowship, dedicated time for training and skills, and flexible structure. So as I say, that will be going live in August. So please do keep an eye on our website. Finally, I want to cover kind of first grant applications, where you might first have experience of writing research grants. So for many of you, the first opportunity you might have to be part of a grant proposal is as a researcher co-investigator while you're a postdoc. And this means that you have a formal role on the grant, and you are actively involved in shaping the research proposal. It means you'll be employed on the project for a significant proportion of your time. And I think it's important because you get that experience of grant writing firsthand, going through the whole peer review process, getting feedback, and seeing the outcome at panel. And you also get the recognition of being part of actively shaping that proposal and the success should you get funded. Gives you grant management experience, which again is quite important when we're giving out funding for £500,000 or £1 million grant. That's quite a big responsibility, and just understanding how we expect teams to manage that and report back to EPSRC is really important. It just expresses the research ambition and how you're going to drive the project. And then the final scheme I want to cover is a New Investigator Award. So this is targeting academics who have their first permanent position, so have been made a lecturer, and it'll be your first grant as a principal investigator. And it's really designed to kind of kickstart your career by funding a research programme and starting to build a research group. As it's a kind of first grant to EPSRC, the scale is usually smaller than you would see in a standard grant application. And therefore we expect the projects to kind of be self-contained, comprise a single research vision with clearly defined objectives and outcomes. We typically expect New Investigator Awards to range from 1 to 3 years to be able to achieve those outcomes. And if you are proposing something that's very complicated, multifaceted research programme with many objectives, we would probably recommend that you look at a standard mode grant application. So this award can follow the individual to a new and eligible institution in a similar manner to a fellowship award. So it's got that flexibility built in as well. And then finally, a slide on eligibility for a New Investigator Award. as I say, they're really targeted at people who haven't held large grants before. This should be your first application to EPSRC as principal investigator. We wouldn't have expected you to have managed any large grants before, so anything over 100. We also wouldn't have expected to hold a grant that includes postdoc. And so that just ensures that everybody's kind of the same level when going through the peer review process, and it's kind of fair in that sense. If you have any questions about eligibility for new investigator awards, we really encourage you to get in contact with EPSRC to discuss it, and we can then advise on what the most appropriate scheme would be for your programme. So that's a really kind of quick overview of our key funding mechanisms, and especially for early career researchers. As I say, EPSRC is really happy to be approached to discuss proposals and advise where necessary. The other thing that's kind of important to note is grant funding is really competitive. So typically fellowships have a success rate of 10 to 20% and standard Mo grants around 30%. But there is a lot of support available to help you in developing your research idea, actually writing the grant, and understanding all the intricacies of the peer review process and the expectations. So EPSRC are very happy to help and advise, but also I very much advise you to speak to your colleagues who have been through this process many times, and we'll be able to give you hints and tips on how to shape your proposal and how to write it, as well as the University Research Office staff who have a lot of experience with all of the different EPSRC funding schemes and the criteria, and can help you. So that's it for me. I'm very happy to take questions.
Thank you, Katherine. That was a really nice talk. It's great to hear kind of an overview of everything that's offered, because it can be a bit confusing sometimes to navigate through all this. So it was really, really nice to hear all of it kind of in one place. We do have a couple of questions if we have time for them. So the first one is, how does one find about different grants and funding one can apply for? Is there some sort of central UKRI database or one can search?
Yeah, so UKRI has the funding finder, which it gives an overview of all the open calls and opportunities for the whole of UKRI. In terms of the schemes that I just mentioned, so standard mode grants, new investigator awards and fellowships, we have specific pages on the EPSRC website with guidance, and also usually named contacts for each of the themes to help advise. But they don't have open and closing dates, so I very much advise you to just read the guidance on the website and speak to colleagues about when the best time to put the application in is.
Thank you. So there's other two that are related, so I will just read both. The first one is, can international students apply to fellowships? And the second one is, can an investigator from a Latin American public university apply for a fellowship, or is it mandatory for the public university to apply to be eligible?
Okay, so international candidates are able to apply for fellowships. There you should agree to host you, and so that needs to be on
a little bit. Sorry, can you just repeat that?
Oh, sorry, am I back? Can you hear me?
Yes,
okay?
you're back. Yes.
Okay, so yes, international candidates are able to apply for fellowships, but there needs to be agreement from a UK based institution where you will be carrying out that fellowship. And as I say, it's really important that you agree that upfront, and that they are able to write a letter of support along with your application to say how they'll support you. But yeah, absolutely. If you are overseas at the moment and want to apply to hold a fellowship in the UK, then I'd advise you to start discussions with the university where you'd want to hold it, and to see how they'll support you.
Perfect. Thank you very much. We have one more question. We'll just put in the Slack, and if you have a chance to look over there, that would be amazing. And yeah, well, thank you very much for the talk. It was great having you, and hope to see you again sometime.